Good morning. It's my pleasure to be back with all of you here today. The 60th Annual Missions Conference. This is a special day, a special moment, a special church. And I think it's been really great to just see all these wonderful missions partners and just the brave heroes of the faith who are out there doing the work of God in remote regions of the world and some, even here in America. But you know what's so amazing about today? What's so great about all these missionaries and all these partners represented from all around the world, it's not that we brought them here to Black Rock. It's that we've brought them here so that they could take us out there, so that they can take us and our minds through the stories and conversations and photos, and from the stories of their work so that we can be sitting here, be taken outside of these walls to where they are. In other words, if I may be so bold to say, that if at the end of this week, your takeaway is, wow, Black Rock Church is great, you have missed the point. If your takeaway after this week is, wow, God is great, then you've hit the nail on the head. And so the question is, how can I, sitting here, how can we as a church join in with what this great God is doing? I work for an organization called IJM, International Justice Mission, and we are the largest anti-slavery organization in the world, working on the front lines in nearly 20 communities in Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and India. And I want to start out and say thank you. Thank you to all of you because you as a church have committed to partnering with IJM. And we are just so grateful that we get to end slavery in Ghana together. Now, those of you who were here last year, and I know many of you weren't here last year, in which case I say welcome. But if those of you who were here last year may remember that I told you about the story of a boy named Gideon. Gideon was forced to work on Lake Volta in Ghana. Now, Lake Volta is the largest man-made lake in the world. By surface area, it's about 2/3 the size of the state of Connecticut. Gideon was stolen from his family and forced to fish the lake for years, alongside an estimated 10,000 boys enslaved on Lake Volta. To think that there are 10,000 boys 10,000 miles away from here who are forced every day to work for someone by force. And we begin to realize the value of bringing everyone here so that we can be taken outside of these walls. 10,000 boys forced to dive into a lake to untangle the nets that have been snagged on the submerged trees and roots. As this gets caught on all of the different things that this man-made lake has in the bottom, you can imagine that these young boys whose tiny little fingers can get into the nooks and crannies of what is underneath this water and their tiny fingers can work to unsnagging the nets that are caught in this lake. But the real reason that boys are used instead of men in this work is simply because boys don't hit back. Now, I shared with you last year about the story about how Gideon and IJM's team in Ghana was able to rescue Gideon off the lake along with 9 other boys. We had just opened up our field office in Ghana, and this was actually our first rescue operation. And it was a sign that the tide was turning in Ghana for those boys on Lake Volta. But right now, I'd like to tell you about another Gideon. This Gideon is found in the Bible, in the book of Judges, in chapter 6. The Israelites in Judges 6 were as well faced with oppressors, was faced with violence and oppression, and they went by the name of the Midianites. The Midianites came in, and it says like locusts would take them, would take their food, would take their homes, and took their dignity. So evil and bent on injustice that the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. And so we pick up the story in Judges 6, verse 12. It says, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all of his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." The Lord appears to Gideon, and he says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Now, if this were a television show, this is the moment where they would cue the laugh track. Because Gideon is anything but mighty and anything but a warrior. In fact, he says of himself, I'm the weakest in my family, and I come from the weakest clan. I'm the weakest of the weak. I'm the runt. He's the little cousin who goes outside to play with the big boys and then ends up getting hurt and walks home crying. He's the one who's still eating at the kiddie table at Thanksgiving. He is the one who, when you guys go out to hang out, you look at your phones and say, "Hey, did you text Gideon? Did anyone? No one? Oh, we forgot Gideon again." Right? I mean, this is who Gideon is. But God shows up to Gideon, the weakest of this weak, right? This runt. And, it's interesting, right? Black Rock is a great church. But, I mean, you got different things going on. And you imagine that if God showed up and, greeted you, there would be, a sense of awe, a sense of respect, oh, God, this is a big deal. I'm going to respect him and honor him and treat him with, not with Gideon, right? I mean, God shows up and he says, "The Lord is with you." And Gideon gets angry and he's like, "If the Lord is with us, I mean, why has all this happened to us? If the Lord is with us, what is going on? We're facing oppression and injustice all around us. If the Lord is with us." And the funny thing is, if the Lord is with you is really just a greeting. It's, "The Lord is with you. Hello, hi, how are you?" If the Lord is, it's like when you go into work and you greet your coworker and you're like, "Good morning." And they're like, "Good morning, really? Good morning?" My son threw up in the car on the way to school, so I had to turn back. I had to call a sitter. I'm late for work, and now I have to push back my morning meeting, and now I won't be able to eat a lunch and won't get out of here until after 8. Okay, just saying hi, It's one of those scenarios, right? But you struck an accord with this person. And the same thing with God and Gideon. Gideon is so fed up with God, to be honest. He's so fed up with the situation. He can take no more that when God shows up and says hi, Gideon's like, "Really? That's the first thing you're going to say is hi?" But it's interesting that Gideon, as soon as things go wrong, his conclusion is that God has abandoned us. Things are going great. Oh, God is great. Things go bad, and it's like, well, where's God? Right? I mean, it's this sense of the moment starts, the moment things starts taking a turn, we question God. When the job is lost, when the family is hurting, when a relationship is broken, or when the doctor says those words, we start turning to God and say, "If God were with me, none of this would have happened." So Gideon wants to deal with this issue of injustice. He wants to hear from God what is going on with this issue. Gideon's inner monologue is, "Well, God, it's nice that you finally showed up. Now, what are you going to do about this? I mean, don't you care about what's going on?" Don't you know what? Aren't you going to do something about this? Don't you care? And God's answer is a bit surprising, isn't it? He says, am I not sending you? You see, God's answer is, oh, I will do something about it. And I do care. And I send you. It's not quite the answer that Gideon was thinking about, but the principle here is that when there is a problem of injustice and violence and oppression, God does care. And he does do something about it. God sends you. You've probably heard the phrase, when you see something, say something. But the principle here in Judges is that when you see something, you gotta do something about it. You see, when you look around at the world and you say, well, this cannot stand, this is not right, someone's got to do something about it, that is precisely the moment that God says, am I not sending you? When you look around and you hear the stories of all these missionaries when they're out there doing the work and saying, well, that's not right. God, you must do something. And God says, well, yeah. Am I not sending you? This is the call that these missionaries have responded to. Now that means that when you are faced with the reality of modern day slavery, we got to do something. The horrors of 10,000 boys on a lake that are there by force. It means God sends us into that place. We can cry out against injustice and say, God, if you were here, this would not have happened. But God responds, I do care. And I am doing something about it. I'm sending you. But you see, the problem is not just 10,000 boys on a lake in Ghana. There are an estimated 45 million people in slavery today, more than at any other time in history. And so this is not just representative of 10,000 boys on a lake. It's not just a boy on a lake, it's a girl in a brothel in the Dominican Republic. It is a family in Chennai, India, in a brick factory. And it is a small child in front of a webcam in the Philippines. Now, what you may be feeling, that welling emotion in your heart is equal parts anger and passion. Angry at the injustice of modern day slavery and a passion that says something must be done. And that's when we remember that God sends us. We're seeing something and now we have to do something. Well, this is a call that my colleagues and I at International Justice Mission take very seriously. We've committed our lives to say that we cannot simply sit by while 45 million of the world's poor are exploited and enslaved by the powerful. And we have committed ourselves to rescuing each and every slave until all are free.
Lake Volta is the largest man-made lake in the world. It's roughly the size of Delaware and Rhode Island combined. There are an estimated 21,000 children in slavery on the lake. Our own baseline studies showed that of the nearly 2,000 children that we encountered on the lake during that study, 57% of them were trafficked into forced labor conditions, modern day slavery in every respect. These children are often beaten, they're malnourished, they're forced to work often 10, 12, 14 hours a day. An estimated 100 children or more a year die from drowning, diving into the murky waters to free, snagged, submerged gnats.
So there are various ways in which these masters go out to get these children into their fishing industry. And one common one is that they use a lot of deception. So they approach the children, they deceive them that they're going to give them a better life, they will take them to school, and then as a result, the children will be assisting them in some household chores. So when the child says yes, then they approach their parents, then they start negotiating the price, and eventually they pay the price to the parents and then take the child into this forced labor.
When we take people to Lake Volta to observe the boys on the lake and the conditions that they're made to work under, their impulse is almost always to just want to pull them off the fishing boats then and rescue them then. But the problem is, whenever you only do rescue and it's not coupled with an arrest and there are no consequences for the crime, then the slave owner can just replace that child with another child and you've only compounded the misery. Child slavery at its core is a crime. And it's not just a crime, it's what's called a crime of opportunity, which means it only exists because there are no consequences for it. You can get away with it. But once the law starts to become enforced, the crime quickly goes away because you increase the opportunity cost for committing that crime. Little by little, step by step, we see signs of change, and those signs of change build and build and build until they reach a tipping point. There's nowhere for the slave owners to hide. They need to fish on the water. And so I think once law enforcement starts to become effective on Lake Volta, that we're going to see dramatic reductions in the children that are enslaved there.
There is hope that this thing will end. There is hope that when we invest, and more so in prosecuting of these slave masters, we know then that will cause deterrence and slavery on the lake will end.
At IJM, our model is this: we work to rescue slaves, we throw the slave owners in prison, and we partner with the government to end the slave trade forever. God sends, and we take that seriously. And I want you to be encouraged as well because your church, BlackRock Church, takes that seriously as well. Once the leadership of BlackRock heard about the situation on the lake in Ghana, they said to me, well, we want to partner, and they have. And this is what partnering looks like. Showing us what the world is outside of these walls, raising money through your Faith Promise campaign to support the amazing work represented by everyone up here, and praying for the work that is going on around the world as well. Last year, I asked each of you to sign up to join our prayer list, and nearly 400 of you signed up. You have an opportunity later on today to sign up and join our prayer list if you missed that opportunity last year. But God sends us, and we have answered that call. But the story of Gideon in Judges 6 doesn't actually end there with God sending Gideon, because after God sends Gideon, Gideon wasn't done questioning God. He says, well, how can I save Israel? I'm the runt, right? Gideon knows the problem, injustice, and he knows who to turn to, God, and yet when he turns to him, he doesn't like the answer. Gideon says, well, no, you don't know who you're talking to, God. Like, you don't know all the things that I got going on. Like, there's just no way for me to be able to do this. I'm not good enough. It's too hard. It's not going to happen. But God's response to him is, I will be with you. You see, God says, the same God that rescued the Israelites from slavery, the same God that delivered the Israelites from the hands of oppression, the same God that rescued them is the God who says, I will be with you. And so when you hear the stories of these people that are up here, they are telling you stories of God's faithfulness, of God's righteousness, of God's majesty. And that God says to you, wherever I send you, that God will be with you. He doesn't say, when he sends you into the heart of injustice, he doesn't say, I'm going to do it. He doesn't say, well, you better do it. What he says is, I will be with you as you do it, as we do it. God sends us, but God stays with us. What that means is that no matter what God asks you to do, even if it is hard or scary or impossible, God will be with you. In fact, throughout Scripture, whenever God commands his people to go and do a hard or impossible thing, and his people are afraid, whenever God's people saw something and then stepped in to do something about it, his comfort to them was not, oh, it'll be okay, or, oh, you'll really grow from this opportunity. No. His promise was, I will be with you. Even though many times it does work out okay, and you are growing through that process. But the promise of God is that no matter where he sends, he will stay with us. You know why it's so important that God promises to stay with us? Because when you step into the heart of injustice, it will get hard. You know how I said that your prayers have made a difference for those boys on the lake? Well, you may be wondering, well, how do you know that? Well, here's the thing. I told you about our first rescue operation where we rescued Gideon and those 9 other boys. Well, that was almost exactly 2 years ago tomorrow, March 27th, 2015, 2 years. But you see, when you start disrupting the slave trade, there are many powerful people who stand to lose a lot. And those people in Ghana used all of their money and all of their power and all of their influence to try and get us to stop. And what ended up happening is that our ability to conduct more rescue operations on the lake was halted. And so there we sat, waiting and working and waiting and working, desperate and hoping for the day when we would be able to resume operations on the lake. And so we turned to God for help, and we said, God, we have seen the injustice and you have sent us, and now we need your help. We need you to stay with us. And so while we were waiting and working, we were praying every day for us to resume the work that we so desperately wanted to do. We were praying alongside Black Rock Church and the 400 prayer partners that we have here, being reminded of the boys on the lake. There's a woman here in this church who would email me about every other month and say, tell me about the boys. You get more boys? Tell me about the boys. I said, keep praying. Keep praying. And we were told that all signs were pointing towards Christmas 2015, that we were going to be able to get the authority to resume operations, and Christmas came and went. And New Year's came and went. January and February and March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, all the while where we were relying on God and saying, God, would you stay with us in this process, because there are boys on the lake that need rescue. You sent us, and now you have to stay with us, because if, God, you are not in this, then it will not happen. But God's promise to stay with us came true. Because in December of last year, our authority to resume operation on the lake was restored. God said, I will be with you. And when you think it's hard and when you think it's impossible, when you think it's not going to happen anymore, I will be with you. Now, if you know about the story of Gideon in Judges, you know that God brings victory to the Israelites through sending Gideon. So the final promise is that when God sends, God stays, and eventually God saves. So then the question for us is, when we saw the conditions on the lake in Ghana, God sent us. And when things got really difficult, we did not know whether we would be able to continue operations in that country. God stayed with us. But now, having regained the ability to do operations on the lake, the question was, will God save? You know, there's a moment in that video where you see the boys playing soccer. And when we rescued these boys off this boat, you know, they were scared. They didn't know what was going on. You know, you're hearing all these different things that was different than what their life had looked like. And when we got them to shore, you could tell that they were still a little bit, you know, timid and a little bit unsure about what was going on. And then these 24 boys found a soccer ball. And they just started playing soccer. Boys being boys again. Children regaining their childhood. The ability to bring rescue to these boys doesn't just change their situation, it changes their lives. It changes their communities, and we believe it will change their country. The stories of these missionaries that you hear, I mean, it's changing their people's eternities. I mean, when we get sent into the world of injustice, it's hard work, but God sends and God stays and God will save. So you have an opportunity today, Black Rock Church, because we have brought these wonderful partners here to Connecticut so that we could show you the world that is outside of these walls and hear the stories. And remember that God sends and God stays and God saves. Now, the reality is that not everyone here in this room is going to be able to quit their job and sell their house and make the brave decision that these partners have made. But you can send them your money. Black Rock Church has set aside a bold goal of $1.2 million for this Faith Promise campaign. Because all of the work that you see represented here, all of the work that you see represented on this screen, it takes money. And you may not be able to quit your job and sell your house, but you can fund the people that are doing the work. And so my challenge to you is to give generously to this Faith Promise campaign. In fact, I don't have permission to say this, but I would love to see BlackRock Church blow that $1.2 million out of the water. Yeah. You can commit your finances to this Faith Promise campaign. And thank you to the staff of BlackRock Church, to Pastor Stephen and Pastor Larry, because part of that Faith Promise campaign will also go to BlackRock's commitment with IJM to rescue more boys off of that lake. So you can send them your money, but also you can send them your prayers. I mentioned this opportunity for you to be able to come and be a prayer partner with us. We have these prayer cards outside in the lobby, right on the other side of this wall. We have an opportunity for you to join us as a prayer partner with the other 400 brothers and sisters here at BlackRock Church. Sign up, join, get our updates, and pray alongside of us as we work to ending slavery in Ghana. But I wanted to give each and every one of you a practical, tangible opportunity. So inside your programs, you're going to see this card. Go ahead and take this card out of your program, and we have more cards available for you if you need it. But this card is very simple. It just says, "My Prayer for Ghana." And what this card is, I'm asking you to just write out a prayer for those boys on the lake. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to take these cards. We're going to collect them on the way out. There's going to be a basket that the ushers will be holding. I'm going to literally take these cards and I'm going to literally send your prayers to Ghana. And I got to tell you that our staff in our field offices, when we get these cards and these prayers, they are gold to them. They hang them up on their desks, and they remind themselves that there are people 10,000 miles away that are praying for them in the work that they do. So would you just take a moment now and sign this card and write out a prayer for those boys and for our team in Ghana? That even when it gets hard, God is the one who saves. God is the one who sends. He is the one who stays, and He is the one who saves. There are 45 million people in the world waiting for God to save them. Will you help rescue each and every one of them until all are free? Thank you very much.
We want to thank you for watching and listening to our sermons online, and we hope that you will be inspired to live more like Jesus through these. Please check out blackrock.org for more information about our church. Know that you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, and also know that you can give to BlackRock and to our ministry through PushPay, through our mobile app, and on our website. Your donations and your support of our ministry allows us to have these videos online and for us to impact our community.